Friends, colleagues and listeners, here we are now. We've got another podcast in the series with Avery Aviation Software, and I'm pleased to introduce you to Tristan Koch. Lovely name, I've got to say, Tristan.
Thank you.
I'm sure you've had some stick over that over the years. Now, Tristan, Chief Commercial Officer. So obviously, if you can just give us a little bit about, what your responsibilities are and what you're currently doing with Avery Aviation Software.
Yeah, thanks for having us here. So I joined Avery about 3 years ago. My background isn't IT. The team will tell you that. I'm a sales guy. Sort of 20 years in the industry with the likes of BA and American Airlines. But was really interested, particularly during COVID, how digitalisation was changing the industry. And through mutual contacts, met Vitali and Avery, and was totally taken by the company. We were relatively small then, 30, 40 people, now 80 plus. So my roles sort of shifted around a bit. I mean, Chief Commercial Officer sounds very grand, but actually we all dig in at Avery. We do, involved in sales, product development, customer relationships, etc., which is a sort of breath of fresh air for me, getting involved actually at grassroots level again. But I suppose ultimately I've got to bring the revenue in. So it's all very good, looking good and talking good, but if the numbers don't stack up, then I'm not doing my job.
But you've had a lot of successes recently, and obviously coming out of COVID.
Yeah, I mean, the timing was interesting, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, digitalisation has become a real sort of boom area for the industry. I think the journey's still in its early stages. So we were riding a decent wave, but look at the markets today, and world freight, yields have dropped. So the investment into IT in particular has dropped off a little bit. So it's not without its challenges, but I think because we've got a really good product, a good set of people, and we understand the business, we're certainly taking more than our fair market share.
Yeah, but people's mindsets are changing now. Do you find that they're becoming a little bit more aware of what the potential is and how beneficial the potential is, and then when you've got the challenges of attrition levels and succession and experience leaving the business, it's a way of enhancing that again.
Yeah, certainly. Just look at the trade shows we go to. Yeah. I mean, I think 5 or 10 years ago, there might have been 1 or 2 IT companies there.
Yeah, true
It's
enough.
forwarders, it's airlines, it's ground handlers. I think the last 2 shows we've been to, there've been more IT companies than any other sort of part of the business. So it's a competitive part of the marketplace, but it's certainly one that everybody's looking to take advantage of or be invested in. But there's still some nervousness about where the journey takes us, which is understandable. Yeah. It's an unknown territory for many people, and as you probably know, the industry hasn't changed a lot in a very long time. So,
do you find people are still a bit sceptical with cyber security and and allowing another organisation to have so much influence on their business?
That's a really good question, because I was on a panel in Miami, I think about 9 months ago.
Yeah.
And the first question from the floor was, and I don't even know who the person was, but let's just say they were one of the older generation of our business. And they gave a rather sort of, well, why would I trust you with my data? Somebody's going to nick your data and all this. And I said, hang on, just calm down. I said, how do you do your banking? How do you do your shopping? Yeah. And they sort of said, well, do it all online. I said, why would you trust those organisations any more or less than us? And in fact, we're one of the most heavily regulated businesses in the world, not only from a compliancy, but from regulatory. And the guys would look a bit sheepish. And afterward, a number of people came up to me and said, well done. It needs to be said. Look, we're playing by the same rules as many other people. In fact, we're much tighter on our security, on data and penetration testing, etc. We are one of the most tested and regulated organisations. So why not trust us as much as anyone else?
Yeah, and that testing and the process that you have to go through to be tested. I mean, that's pretty robust, isn't it?
Very. I mean, some of it's self-imposed.
Yeah.
I mean,
which you have to do anyhow. Self-assessment's part of it.
Yeah, but we go beyond that. I like to think that we sort of set a benchmark that's higher than the required benchmark. Yeah. Because we're very aware. I mean, let's be honest, we're a medium-sized company with ambition. Yep. And if you want to do business with the large legacy carriers in particular, with large legal departments that are going to crawl over everything you do, large IT departments understand, cyber security, etc., you have to pass the highest tests. So we make a particular sort of policy of being ahead of it rather than behind it.
Yeah. And I find it fascinating because there's a company that I know, and I took some people there, and the guy just came in to me. He said, Chris, he said, do you want to show a real-time test? He said, how confident you are? I said, yeah, no problem. So he said, do you want a cup of tea? So I love a nice hot cup of tea. He went and got me a cup of tea, and he said, "Now, before I put it on the table for you," he said, "Are you prepared to give me a password?" I said, "Yeah, no problem." He said, "Then I'll tell you how many times." He didn't tell me. He didn't say, "I'll tell you if you have." He said, "I'll tell you how many times you've been hacked."
No.
And he was able to come back. The amount of information he gave me before I finished my cup of tea was, I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
Could not believe it.
Yeah.
And now, having discussed with a couple of companies, there's another one now that does financial practices. So, if companies are relying on partners and service partners, etc., well, it's hard for you to go down like a spider's web and find out if anybody is, or if anybody's doing or has done anything that you shouldn't be done. What they can do now is incredible.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of our frustrations is, whilst we want to uphold the highest standards of security and protection, that doesn't mean we shouldn't share data.
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost become not an excuse, but a reason why people are reluctant to do this.
Yeah.
And I think that's a real shame, because actually sharing operational data with no commercial, sort of value seems a little bit ridiculous in this day and age, that we can't, pass that information from, parts of the supply chain to the other part for the better of everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, it still frustrates me a bit. I mean, I can order something from quite a small enterprise in, China for a small plastic product, for one of my hobbies. It arrives 3 days later, and I can track it pretty much from door to door. Yet some parts of air freight, you don't know where your ULD is. I mean, it just seems a little bit strange that we haven't managed to, adopt and adapt to that stuff.
But huge opportunities.
Well, that's the upside, isn't it? I mean, we're in an industry where we're still at the fledgling stage to a certain extent. I mean, we haven't adopted it wholesale. There's new regulations coming that means even more technology will be required.
Yep.
I mean, I think things like, I'm probably going to get the words wrong, but the ownership of a product from cradle to grave.
That's it.
If you produce something, you are the owner of that environmental footprint of that product.
That's it.
Was it ethically produced? All that type of stuff is going to come at us, and are we ready? Not at the moment.
No, and that's going to be a huge can of worms once it comes out. Now, a legacy term, and one that I think was right when it came in, but whether or not it achieved what its objectives were, is TCM.
Yes.
It sounds like a TV channel or whatever, but TCM, so Total Cargo Management. Now, you guys are getting involved in that area as well. What does it mean for you, and what do you think people thought it meant before you started to put your slant on it?
I think, I guess it's two interpretations of it. Total cargo management can just be a service that a supplier provides to, say, an airline.
Yep.
An airline doesn't want to run its own cargo business. It says to typically a GSA, I'll give you a TCM package. I'll arrange your ground handling, I'll do your revenue accounting, I'll deal with the clients, I'll do your selling, etc., etc. So that's what the activity is. But how you manage that activity is through our TCM. So we have a total cargo management product that enables you to perform all of those functions in one environment that's connected to the outside world as well. So if your GHA, if they miss a flight with a pallet, they can send you an FSU or API you the information. Your system knows what's going on. It communicates with your clients, it does your accounting. So we can provide a full digital TCM package to an airline, to a GSA, to anybody else that needs it. We can also combine that in a multi-airline environment. So if you're in a GSA running 6 airlines, you don't want to run 6 different systems.
No.
Those airlines may all have their own basic cargo management system.
But you just want to be able to talk to each one.
We can bring it all into one place.
Yeah.
And this is about 2 things. It's about reducing double, triple data entry, because that's just a manual process that is a waste of time.
Yep.
It's about sharing data more collaboratively so that people can make better decisions in quicker time. And it's also about making the job more enjoyable, because nobody wants to be punching data into multiple systems. So are we eroding what the other parties do? People say that to us, well, you're taking our jobs away. I say, no, we're not. We're making your jobs much more interesting. We're taking away the manual stuff that you don't like doing, giving you time to go and do value add services or something more interesting. So that's a debate we often have.
Yeah, and it's natural. I mean, it's that first defence. But at the end of the day, you're allowing them to focus on the critical rather than the recommended.
And also get ahead of the competition, because, I mean, a very simple example. If you're sent an email from a freight, say you're an airline, you get an email from a freight forwarder. Can you quote me on some business?
Yep.
If you've got to go into 6 systems to find the answer and you reply in an hour, and the forwarder goes, actually, I had a response 30 minutes ago from another airline who sent me a nice digital response with a punch.
I'm taking it there.
Click to confirm, it's gone.
Yeah.
So,
No, I agree. Speed's so important.
Yeah.
During the chat with Vitaly, I was talking about like a relay team. So in the TCM now, if you consider all the participants that are in that particular team, do you just want to give us a couple of pros and cons or the benefits for each team or each member in the relay team? So we just had a little bit with carriers. So if you go down the
you mean in terms of the users?
Yeah.
Okay.
So and why it's more beneficial to link in with yourself or be powered by Avery Solutions.
Well, let's start with the first one, commercial, because that's what I know best. So, despite a lot of business now being done online, the majority is still done on email, or a little bit on telephone or WhatsApp. But email is the most common method of quoting and booking air freight globally. We've got this tool called eMagic. It's an amazing bit of AI that you'd have to talk to Vitaly about how it works, but it basically reads your inbound sales box and says, this email is from this person, they want this. This is it goes off to find the answer from all the airline capacity you manage and sends them a digital answer going, do you want to buy it or not? Or do you want me to talk to me about another solution?
That's good.
So the response time is gone from sort of 45, 50 minutes on email to 2 to 3 minutes via the tool. So commercially, that's
brilliant.
Really attractive.
Yeah.
It also means the sales team can spend less time typing out shipment data and spend more time actually talking to the customer. So that's the commercial side. On the operational side, let's take an example of an offload. In the old days, I mean, I've worked for airlines. You come into work on Monday, you've got full flight, all the Kuehne+Nagel, DSV, DHL, they're all happy. Their business is in the warehouse and it's being shipped off to New York. You come in on Tuesday, you've got 5 phone calls, missed phone calls. Where's my freight? Then operations, you look at what happened. Got offloaded yesterday. Well, we didn't know that.
Exactly.
So when's it rebooked? Friday. And everyone's unhappy. Using the Avery system, the moment that freight doesn't make it to aircraft or gets offloaded at aircraft side, the message is pinged to the Avery system if the ground handler, your partner's doing their job, which you hope they would be. The system then can give you an immediate answer around what shall we do with it. There's a flight in 6 hours, move it to that. The customer gets an automatic auto notification on their WhatsApp or text, whatever you want. So everyone in the loop's aware of what's happening. The the problem's been fixed. Everybody's happy. You've optimized the flight as well. This is a really boring example, but it's actually quite important. When you have a proper connected system, you tend to have one, what I call source of truth for data. So the person putting the data in at the beginning might be the shipper, it might be the freight forwarder, it might even be the airline or GSA. But once you've put it into the system once, because we're connected to everything else, you don't get what I call data pollution. It's a bit like Chinese whispers. If I whisper something to you, by the time it gets to the 5th person, it's all over the shop. So if you put data in as one source of truth, and everybody shares that information in the same environment collaboratively, there can be no data pollution. So what you get is, there's no problems with, when it's received at warehouse, this bit's 4 meters long, not 320. This weight is 200 kilos. They said on the booking it was 250, etc., etc. So you reduce all sorts of operational pain because what you get is what you expect to get. You don't get things like billing queries because there's a digital footprint of the whole transaction. I used to get this a lot.
Plus you can track it and it's accurate.
Everything's in the same place and digitally sort of stored. I mean, I used to get phone calls from freight forwarders when I was at the airlines. Can you do me £1.20 to Nairobi tomorrow? Yeah, no problem, mate. Yeah, whatever. And then a month later, you get the billing goes through CAS and you get rejection. Well, I remember you said 120. No, you didn't. You said 110, and then you only bought me 2 ton. You promised me 4 ton, and there's no record of this. It just creates confusion, and it's a waste of time. So just having one source of truth and sharing that information eradicates a lot of downstream problems operationally, commercially, and otherwise. So
and everybody's talking about sharing. All right. So one of the things that I've got huge interest in, which I find I understand why, but I also wish they could, is on safety. Every safety, because everybody thinks like if I share my safety and it's worse then the next person, then they'll use that as why they should use them instead of us. All that. But it's a shame. But the whole concept of sharing, and you made a lovely quote, dare I say.
No, did I?
No API call charges it was around, and what you said was about facilitate collaboration and not hinder it. So, I mean, even that small area where people say they collaborate and have an open API communication, etc., people still want to, and, you know, should they commercialise it? Anybody should commercialise what they can if they can, and if there's a customer for it. But it does hinder that open that open collaboration, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Vitaly, our CEO, you know, he was the first to sort of openly state this. As an industry, we should be much more open to sharing our API connections for the benefit of all, because monetizing that piece of the communication actually hinders our collaboration. And you know, perhaps we are a commercial entity. We need to make money, but we think the bigger picture is making our clients, you know, have a better experience. Therefore, they're happy to pay us a little bit of money to do that, but not through sort of, if you like, sort of penny pitching the bit in the middle.
Which at the end of the day is a tool or a vehicle, isn't it?
Yeah, I think. My own feeling on this is, I don't know. I was around when we first got mobile phones, and you know, you had 20 minutes. You know, I was with 1-to-1 or something with a phone this big, and you got your 20 minutes, and you were like, oh my god, am I going to use them all up this month? And then, you know, if you've watched the film Blackberry, you suddenly realise that it's not about the minutes, it was about the data, and I think this will evolve the same way. So I think it's an evolutionary phase, but it's
also something that's still going on with the blooming chargers. Not all being the same, or you know,
well, they just changed, haven't they? Just the EU, but we're not part of that, aren't we?
Exactly. Listen, I want to ask you one other thing related to TCM, and it's something that I'm getting loads of people contact me there. They're talking about the Friday shipment, and they're talking about if they make a booking and it's supposed to arrive sometime before lunchtime or whatever on a Friday, and if it doesn't get in when it should, which invariably happens, that they then get hit hugely with the THCs, and they end up getting charged for storage, which they think is incorrect. So a lot of people now are starting to shift it. So instead of the Friday, Thursday is now the deadline, so that they've got a little bit of a buffer, so they don't end up paying all these charges at the end. Under the TCM, are you guys looking at that with the whole group of parties that are involved in it? So from the GHA, the carrier, forwarders.
What you mean in terms of shifting more towards a Thursday?
No, just how the accuracy.
Oh, the application.
How the accuracy, and you were talking there about. I made a note there about no data pollution. How the accuracy of when the booking and the actual time of arrival. So another party in our industry I feel sorry for are the truckers, because they turn up, they're ready. Nobody pays them for their waiting time. Nobody pays them for their delay time, and then if they go out of hours, it's more cost, etc. Do you think that will eventually come, so the transparency of the actual process will be available for people to see? And if somebody has influenced that process to be delayed or elongated, that some of the cost or some of the offset shifts down?
Yeah, I mean, you need to get somebody on here called Charlie Falk. He runs Gold Star. They're the biggest trucking company on the airport. He's a good friend of mine, because he's very vocal about these things, because he ends up biting he ends up taking the charges a lot of the time. And Gold Star are actually one of the leaders in terms of using IT to mitigate their losses. So anyway, that's not the answer, but I think the answer very much is yes. I mean, if there's a lot of this industry that's hidden away a little bit, and there is part of the reason possibly that we don't see as much advancement with the use of digital technology is the lack of transparency has been, let's just say, not unhelpful to certain parties in the supply chain. And I think anything that exposes the whole, gives more transparency to everybody, can only bring more efficiency and benefits. So we're absolutely supporters of that, and we can facilitate that process.
Yeah, and I just think with the advancement now with all the booking platforms, you can see what your comparison rates are from a carrier perspective. You decide to book it, yes, but the customer doesn't see the comparison sides of who's the handling company with that carrier, and what happens if you get delays or how the THCs are manifested and multiplied.
They should be given that information.
That's what
I totally support that. And I come from, if you like, the other side of the fence. I'm from the airline side originally, and I think most people why not make people responsible for the services they're supposed to deliver?
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with that, and if we can help, because I think long term the exposure of that information to each other only brings benefits.
Yep.
So
Yep.
there may be some pain in between, but
I like the openness of what you're saying, and also we were talking earlier about the change management, and some organisations being more receptive to what you're doing because it's part of change management or positive disruption. So.
I can give you one example of that because I think it's a really good one. I was at American Airlines cargo when they went through a huge IT change. They had, I think it was something like 130 legacy systems. One for revenue management, one for accounting, one for capacity management. There was just this massive sort of nest of systems all trying to interact. And they went with one of the large providers, EPS, iCargo system. Which, good choice. And, big player in the market, but the guy that sort of led that, Jim Butler, who was the president of Cargo, and a lady called Jessica Tyler, who subsequently...
I know Jess.
Both really... two people I really enjoyed working with and who were really good at their jobs and understood the business.
Yeah.
And the one thing I'll never forget, the first session we had where they stood up and said, we're going to do this massive IT change.
Yep.
And then we're going to invest more money in the change management program than we are in the actual product. And the product wasn't cheap. I'm not going to disclose what it was, but there was lots of zeros. And American Airlines Cargo went through one of the smoothest IT transitions of any large organisation. And I think that was because of the foresight of the management that said, you can buy any IT system you want, but if you don't show the people how to use it, get them to engage with it, trust it, it isn't going anywhere. So I learned a lot from that exercise. And I think in Avery, we try and repeat that experience.
Yeah.
You'll speak to Phaedra in a minute, who's responsible for customer success.
Yep.
It's not just about plugging the right bits of the system in and out. It's making sure the people understand it, use it, trust it, engage with you, and go through that management change or that change process efficiently.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to speaking with Phaedra because customer success is a real challenging title.
Yeah, we can sell it,
so
but she's got to deliver it.
Exactly. So I'm looking forward to that. Yeah. Listen, Tristan, thanks very, very much. Yeah. Really appreciate it. It's always nice to see you. Always nice to hear from you, and from a practical perspective as well. So really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Cheers.